The theme of this discussion is the big lie. It's almost comical that the party based on stealing elections and repressing the vote via voter suppression, gerrymandering, messing with the census, whatever they possibly can, every potential legal and illegal advantage that they can gain colluding with Russian espionage, that those people are the people worried about election fraud. Has anybody wondered all of the cases of voter suppression in the since the Southern strategy, when the Southern Democrats became today's evangelical Republicans? Um, every single case of voter suppression has been by the Republican Party that has been thrown out of the court and found unconstitutional. There are literally dozens of cases before the United States Supreme Court where different states try different tactics, things like sending police down to the polls to crack down on minorities with warrant and traffic violations and unpaid parking tickets and child support, sending them down to certain areas where there's a large urban population to discourage potential voters that they deem unfavorable to their cause. Loyola Law School did a study of 1 billion votes cast over many elections in the United States over years and years and years. And they found 34 out of 1 billion potential cases of impersonation. This bloody shirt, this fake crisis of people voting illegally. First of all, in America, voter impersonation does not happen, does not exist, is not a threat, is not something the Republicans are trying to stop. They're trying to stop Democratic voters from voting. Now they claim mail-in ballots are somehow toxic or unable to be checked. First of all, you register with the state, who has your fingerprints, who has your signature, who has your photograph, who has your address. These lying Republicans who get up and claim, oh, they'll send a mail-in absentee ballot to anyone for any reason. No, they won't. The people who have the most information on you in the entire planet verify who you are before they send you a named ballot to your address of record. So due to the registration and all of the checks that they do before and the checks of the signature that they do afterwards, the idea that absentee voting is in any way more dangerous than in-person voting is a joke. In fact, the people that have been arrested in this last election, almost all of them, a handful of cases did get caught for voter fraud. All Republicans trying to vote twice for Trump, once for a dead relative or someone they didn't think was going to vote, and then themselves voting in person and trying to send in a mail-in ballot. That's typically how the few handful of cases of voter fraud that were caught from the 2020 election actually happened. By the way, if anybody actually stole an election, was Donald Trump and Putin and Comey in 2016. Putin, let's remember, hacked the Democratic Party, and while he was conducting, as his attack of espionage is going on against senior Democrats, one Donald J. Trump, the only person who loves Putin in American politics and thinks he's a great guy, right or left at this time, he's the principal Putin lover, goes on television multiple times and says, Russia, if you're listening, find Hillary's emails and ... you will be richly rewarded. The man publicly conspired with Russian. He did it secretly when his son met with Russian government agents looking for dirt, just seeking any assistance from a foreign entity in a campaign election is a felony. Trump Jr. should be prosecuted. Manafort was prosecuted. Numerous other Trump officials were prosecuted. And Michael Cohen went to jail for felony campaign violations. So we know Trump's campaign committed felonies to get elected. We know that he publicly told the Russians he would reward them while they were conducting illegal espionage against his own country. Only Barr's Justice Department wouldn't prosecute Trump and Trump Jr. and Jared for the crimes that they did in the so-called, now the Republicans are calling it the Russia hoax, even though we saw it with our own eyes. We saw the man conspire with Putin on TV. And on top of that, Christopher Steele's report that they knocked so much has been proven 100% correct. 100% correct, as Trump has gone out of his way to be the biggest ass kisser and bootlicker and puppet to Vladimir Putin, the biggest self-avowed enemy of America on the globe, and enemy of democracy on the globe. He publicly conspired with Putin. And his son did it in secret in his own building. And then this guy complains about stolen elections. The big lie of 2020 was thrown out of 60 different courts. They couldn't prove one vote of fraud. They came in and said, we must assume that there's fraud now because obviously since we haven't found any fraud, it's so hard to detect. I call it the dark matter theory of fraud, where interestingly, you must assume fraud if there's no evidence of fraud, because that shows how hard it is to prove the fraud. This was what Giuliani was arguing in front of the Supreme Court. Or wanted to. They never took the case. The Supreme Court, made up of 3 Trump appointees, refused to touch this case. All the lower courts threw it out. 8 judges in favor of Trump, who Trump appointed, voted against his claims of election fraud. Georgia, which he's gone on the warpath, has a complete Republican government, legislature, governor, state secretary of state, everybody. They simply would not break the law for Donald Trump and say 2 + 2 = 5 and you won. And now they're on the outs. Now they're getting death threats. People local canvassing boards. This is fascism. This is what the Nazis would do. This is what the Bolsheviks would do when they wanted to take over some place that didn't want to be taken over. They would start threatening local officials like they did to the canvassing and election officials. This man, Donald Trump, and we saw him incite a terrorist attack. We saw him destroy 250 years of American legacy by becoming the first ex-president, first person to lose an election, to try to hold on to power illegally via terrorism and fraud and lies that were laughed out of every court. Could not prove one case anywhere. So the only thieves and crooks are the Republican Party, who have lost the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections, but up until recently, up until Biden's election, ran everything because of gerrymandering, because of the electoral colleges and the Constitution's favoring of the rural terrorist, the large landowning rural terrorist in the Constitution via the Electoral College and the Senate. On top of that unjust privilege, they cheat at every possible chance and push it to the limit, even messing with the census. These people, and I call them people loosely because they're more of like a virus, a parasite, a disease, have the gall to have their entire strategy be disenfranchising minorities and cutting up districts in the most advantageous way and intimidating state officials and sending terrorists to Congress to murder Congress, and then they think that they deserve the banner of protecting voting and civil rights and democracy? You're the enemies of democracy. End of rant.